What is up, people? Sorry about all that crap. I don't even know what the hell I was. My audio is all messed up, so we'll see how that goes and go from there. But like I was saying earlier yesterday, I'm gonna be going on some odd, weird times. But hey, you know, it is what it is. What's up? I see ya. What's up, Classified? How you doing? Welcome, welcome. Let me give you a wrench. You are safe. Like I said, it's gonna be an open topic. Nothing at all in particular. Kind of wanted to touch in on, you know, the argument me and Freemind were having. I'm pretty sure he has the link. I'm not sure, but I do know. I'd love for you guys to share the link and hit that little like button, and that way we can get, you know, more people in here and have a better discussion over it all. So again, like I said, guys, the link to the meetup is already in the bunker. So you guys who are privy to that can jump on now. Other than that, I'm gonna put the link in the chat in a little bit, so, and not too long, don't worry about that. But one of the main things I wanted to discuss, but before I discuss, is say what's up. What's up, Glim? I see you out there, man. Some good points you had in the beginning when you type it in the chat. What's up, Crash? What's up, True Blue? What's up, Blue Marble? What is up, Militant Manny? What's up, Cruising with Jay? Let's see who else there is. Quite a few of you this time. And if you guys can't hear me or I'm too loud, let me know. Got True Blue, you guys bickering. Leighton Bell, what's up? How you doing? Okay, got one there. Who else is here? What's up, Unpaid? How you doing, my friend? Let me see. What's up, Farmer's Boy? It's been a minute. And I think that's it. Oh, what's up, No Name? What is up, Adam? How you doing? What's up, Terry? How you doing? What is up, fam? What's up, Drez? How you doing? And said it's classified. Hey, what's up, Huey? How you doing? And that's about it. So like I was saying, it's gonna be open topic. I do apologize for the little late start. Most, you know what? That's because unpaid. That's because in that server, I actually did that channel, and I'm pretty sure nobody can see it. So I'm gonna go ahead and post it in the general area in the bunker, so you guys get that link. Let me see. Okay. All right, unpaid. Yeah, I'm just gonna send you the link right now, since you were first person I saw on there. And then for the rest of the people, I'm gonna put the link in the regular chat area of the stream. That way, it's no confusion. It's gonna be in area 15, and in the live stream text area. And if you guys can't see him there, let me know so I can get one of my little tech guys to over there to fix it. Okay, here we go. So like I said, didn't really have a bunch of stuff I wanted to really get into, but I wanted to definitely talk about a couple of the topics that we went into. What's up, Unpaid? How you doing, sir? Oh, he can't hear me. Can you hear me? Yeah. Okay. It's goddamn it. Hang on 1 second, because it is definitely my side.
Hey, can I pass this link on to a personal friend of mine?
Absolutely.
Okay, excellent. It's Leighton.
Let's see. I may have to. Okay, this is what I'm gonna do. Give me 1/2 second. I'm gonna turn off this fucking voice meter and link it to my and then do the regular style, because right now it's making really bad echo.
We're doing it regular style.
That is damn right. The only way.
Hey, Blue, what's shaking, man?
There you go. All right, so you guys don't hear echo, so that's good now. It's not funny. Stop saying that. All right, hang on. No one can hear you. No one can hear you guys yet. 1 second. Okay.
I've got a buddy of mine that's going to be joining.
All right. So did you guys you talking about last night, the other night, or did you
Yeah, I can't get out. I can't leave.
Oh, so after you guys had left, or the day that we were talking, when he left, he didn't do it again. He actually was able to get out, but he did it again anyway. So I have like 2 clips of it now. It's funny shit.
Nice. It's called the Aaron Witch Project.
Yes.
Holy shit, dude.
So you guys
Your computer doesn't have an Oscar Foxtrot switch on it.
Yeah, so like I said, I do apologize for being late. What it is that my brother actually runs the high school football team here in San Diego, one of the teams, and his son, my oldest nephew, plays for him, and they didn't win tonight, so they're yelling, and so I waited till the yelling was done.
It gave me and Blue a chance to have a nap. Us old men got to rest occasionally.
Shit, I napped twice in that rant I just had.
Hell, I was over at Jose's talking to Allie B.
Oh, why? I'm starting to. I could talk to him, but I'm not expecting to get anywhere.
Well, we got totally away from flat Earth, and it's kind of a good conversation.
Yeah, he's kind of like Aaron.
Okay.
Yeah, we heard.
Is that Leighton?
Yeah, that's me.
Hey, amigo, there you are. Cool. Glad you could join us.
Hey, came in early.
Hey, Blue. This is a personal friend of mine, Leighton. He's a young feller, but he's a good guy.
Hey,
he's all around good feller.
Blue.
How you doing, Leighton? Welcome to the panel live stream.
Nice to
Yeah,
be here.
BlueMarbleScience is Blue's channel, and he's got some great stuff on his channel. I really recommend you subscribe to it.
His link is in my description as well for anyone else that wants to
Yeah.
check Big Blue out. Definitely worth it.
I did mirror that video by Slice Barcane, so I've got that video up on my channel now.
Oh, cool.
Let me see. Well, I haven't put your link in my chat because you said you were at the time you weren't.
Well, yeah, and that's cool. I don't really have anything yet.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead and leave it out.
I have actually 2 versions of the compressing photos. I have 2 uploads that are ready to be uploaded.
Oh, nice.
I'm going to send you the original one with the space photos, and then I'll send you the one we did the other night, basically.
Now, if I need to, I can recreate the photos. I just can't do it while I'm in a meet. So.
Well, yeah. Well, what I did. Well, one's only ready. Only one of them is ready for an upload. The other one is just clips of what we were doing. So I may want to send that to you so you can show. This image is the original, and then this image is.
Oh yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, that'd be cool, man.
Yeah. Because actually, someone was it the other night? Someone had actually reminded me about it. So
yeah. Leighton is just now kind of sticking his toe in the flat Earth, the flat Earth controversy.
Run.
He's finding it hard to believe that some people still believe the Earth is flat.
Well, it's not so. It would be more of a who do you know and what level of understanding do they perceive to have?
And also, have they been conned by somebody into believing it?
Absolutely. For instance, I contribute. Leighton says, I was a flat earther for 2.5 years, and I contribute based on just not having a conscious and a knowledgeable understanding of the earth that we live on. So what ends up happening is you hear different little snippets of evidence, quote unquote, which is basically just globe phenomenon. But it's easy to run with that when you're having a philosophical debate with people who may not absolutely understand it themselves. So as someone who believes it's flat, having a conversation with someone who thinks they know all about the globe, it kind of sounds like an actual conversation, like a philosophical argument. And once you feel comfortable doing that as a flat earther, it's very difficult to figure out what's understandable and what's not.
And Shells, I really don't think the way you said that, you said some people still believe the Earth is flat.
Well, yeah, I kind of fucked up there.
Yeah, I want to tell you that as far as I can tell, if you go back 15 years ago, there was only one guy at a homeless shelter in Steubenville, Ohio, that thought the Earth was flat.
And he talked to telephone poles.
Well, here's another thing. The speed of light wasn't as accurate as it is now.
Yeah, now they got the engine tuned up. Speed of light is much faster.
Because they have the accelerator pedal on that. If you don't understand a lot of topics that are involved in this, physics, geometry, you name it, you're gonna have a hard time distinguishing what's reality and what do you throw out. So it's kind of a place where flat Earth is community, I would say, but it's a place where you kind of test what you know and persecute people who think they know. Is basically
I'm definitely going to do a lot more listening than talking, just trying to understand. For the most part, I'm sure eventually I'll get into it and start debating with you guys.
Yeah, just kind of hang back and listen, and it gets really interesting sometimes.
Well, yeah, I was with you on the last live stream, and it was pretty awesome. And I watched the one you did the other day, and that was hilarious.
Was he over at Jose's?
No, I sent him the link to me and Aaron from last night.
My God, that guy.
Yeah, he's not a flat earther. He's what I call a flat earth apologizer. Is that what did you say?
Apologist.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Apologist. Yeah.
he's fueled by alcohol. So that's not the exact. I mean, he's just as annoying, but yeah, he's fueled by alcohol. It's a crazy situation.
Yeah, tonight I'm fueled by Dr. McGillicuddy's Intense Wild Grape, 21%.
I don't know what you do on your spare time, but
That wasn't the sponsor, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, but it's better. Yeah, I guess the best way to explain, and I can't believe I'm going to say this. The best if I'm explaining this to a normie.
A Globe proponent. A Globe proponent.
Yes. Well, the best thing I would. It's for me. I get to learn everything. Name it. I've heard a piece of that information. I researched into it. Blah blah blah. But for me, it's just a place for gaining all this knowledge. I got a bunch of smart ass motherfuckers on my panel, and every day I'm able to, if I want, challenge my views to see how correct they are, or to challenge anyone else's views to see how incorrect they are. Which you'll start noticing is the way people argue, the way people present things, both sides.
There's some folks that are willing to listen and be respectful, and then there's others that are more stubborn than Gladys.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen. I think you've seen my past, G-Bear, that if somebody refuses to, if they refuse to listen to me and hear my points, I won't really argue with them because there's no point in trying.
Yeah, just so you know, this is like one of the last resorts. This is like a place where disrespect is a no-no. So sometimes I gotta, just calm people down. Some people can't talk to some. It's fun, but overall,
Sean's had to get on me and calm me down before. I've had to do the same to him.
Oh yeah, I get triggered, and that's the funny part because I get triggered easier than anybody. Trust me, no one that gets triggered as easy as I do.
So how about we talk about this FE core thing? Because I'd like to hear some other people's takes on this.
All right, and we're going to also bring up resolution again because free-minded is somewhere out there listening. So,
yeah, the Rayleigh criteria and all that. Actually, I'd like to talk to Free again. That'd be swell.
Oh yeah, he's a good guy. He'll be around. I think he's in 24/7 right now. So I shared the link. I shared the link there so he knows what's going on. What about the FE core did you want to? Just so everyone knows, I don't want to share any of their shit. We can talk about it, but I don't want any FE core on my screens to get control.
No, that's fine. That's fine. I'm just, first off, the claims that they're filing or the strikes that they're filing are false. They're patently and demonstrably false. They're filing copyright claims on things that they don't have copyrighted. They're filing privacy claims against things that aren't private.
Yeah, so what I got from it was Sly made an upload. They took a chunk of his upload and said it was a copyright.
No, at first they went after him for privacy for showing their pictures that they have posted on their publicly available website.
Yeah, they're public they're stupid. I can't handle that shit. And
I mean, you go to
what people don't really understand is what about FE core is it's about 5 or 6 flat earthers. And
7.
Yeah, but if that that basically think of things and then hire professionals to set it up, and then they literally take from their notes and write what they want on FE core. I think it's sick and disingenuous that to be given flat earth proof, you have to first become a member to see the results. It's ridiculous. And every time every result they've shown,
has been interesting.
Yeah, and it also started by, the test runs showed it was flat, but we didn't record it, or we didn't have the data set up ready, blah, blah, blah.
Always an excuse.
Yeah. I'm going to tell you right now, Karen, she knows it's not flat. She's running with this shit, and she loves it. I know that for a fact. She was bragging about fucking being able to go on trips and shit when they were talking about the Belfort level experiment they wanted to do. Yeah, they get paid to fucking go wherever the hell they want, and she knows it, and she just enjoys the shit out of it.
Yeah.
While she looks for Bigfoot.
Yeah.
Which is another thing. John,
I mean,
go ahead.
The privacy claims, and I'm going to go ahead and kind of hit the fringes here. The privacy claims are all about some information that you can any person can see. They fire up their web browser, they go to fecore.org, and then use the menu to go to the About Us page. All the information's right there. All the information that Sly Sparkane shared was right there. Pictures, names, titles within the corporation, them saying that they're a 501c3, and they're not. All of that information is right there at fecore.org about us. And that's what they were hitting him with the privacy claims for.
Yeah, see, I had no clue.
And it's publicly available. Anybody that's not behind any kind of firewall, it's not behind any kind of, login or anything like that.
Well, they're just banking on the idea that the YouTube guidelines prohibit you from sharing personal information on anybody. And it's hidden. I think they think they're going to get away with that. I really don't think at the end of the day they will.
They're going to get spanked.
Yeah, you don't really get... And that's the other thing. I know a lot of sliders are pretty pissed about it too. Whether it be on the side or not, but it's ridiculous because I got hit with one of those, and I almost got hit with another one just recently. The idea, or not the same, but the idea that they can copyright something that doesn't even belong to them.
Right.
That's a YouTube issue, I think. I'm gonna be honest.
I think Red's Rhetoric and Astro got hit with a copyright strike on their own video.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to me. But I only know it as a troll tactic. I didn't know FEcore was doing that bad.
Yeah.
But that's one of those situations where YouTube knows about it. That's YouTube's fault. YouTube is issued with that. Because put it this way, if someone I know is going to constantly put uploads against everything I'm saying, that's their leverage. Being able to copyright strike these content creators that show their crap.
And here's the funny thing: the copyright infringement report that they filed is about something that's not copyrighted or trademarked.
Well, see, that's the other issue. YouTube doesn't have a Hugh. You're hot micing. YouTube doesn't have a analytic that will actually distinguish between anything. So if your upload tag is basically what it is, matches with that upload tag, YouTube, as far as they're concerned, it goes, who's complaining, who's the defendant, it's not our problem. Go to court if it's that big of a problem for both of you to figure out.
Well, that's an inherent issue with this reporting system that has to be fixed because it's obviously sorely, badly broken.
Oh yeah, trust me, there's so many other issues, whether it be from the Hangouts, people getting porn bombed. YouTube's known about all that stuff. They just don't care. It's not in their best interest to get involved.
Well, it's in their best interest to get their shit together and fix this.
Why? Because if you don't, everyone's going to end up doing is going to a wonderful new platform that I'm going to promote the shit out of right now. TRUUTUBE. TRUUTUBE. That's my boy Dreads. Question Everything in the chat. He actually created a platform just like it's kind of like YouTube. It has a lot more options, but it's not going to be censored like YouTube is. And
well,
he's a truth.
If it's not censored to some degree or not, you're still going to have some legal issues. If or potentially you could have some legal issues if it's not censored in some manner.
But it's not. I think the corporate side of Google is the reason it's like that. Because people that don't know, Google owns YouTube.
Oh yeah,
that's a corporation issue as well. Someone getting porn bombed means nothing to that fucking fiscal bill. That's our fiscal year. You can give a shit less. Who cares? That's a problem. But it's how they run it now.
And that's an unfortunate thing.
Oh yeah.
By the way, the platform you just mentioned, could you put that in side chat and also post that into the YouTube chat?
100%.
Thank you. I'd appreciate that.
What scene did I use that? I'm all confused. Hang on 1 second. My OBS did a whole bunch of weird shit on its own again, so I'm playing the Chase It game. Alright, so the link for that is in here. Alright, so I guess I'm gonna go put it in the chat now. Actually, I'm gonna get this right, so
Man, I don't know why I'm having this coughing fit.
Are you smoking anything?
I only smoke 40 packs a day, that's all.
Oh, you know. Yeah,
chugga, choo.
That won't hurt you.
No, it definitely won't hurt you.
I cough up asphalt.
Oh, that's fun.
Oh, shit.
There we go. And then I'll put the link out there for everyone else. You guys count too. There we go. What's up, Lenny? Shout out to Vegans. Ha ha ha. Yeah, Dreads. I'm just reading from the chat real quick. Yeah, Dreads was saying something about. He was commenting about the issues with YouTube. I can tell you right now, there's about at least five different YouTube issues that I'm not even talking low scale issues, like channels are going down, like the million sub channels, like they get taken down because of these issues. It's literally it would have to affect their money for it to be worth a shit to even care to think about whether or not it's an issue. They don't even have a department. Lady answers the phone and said, "We don't have a department for hacking." So, are you serious? You guys just that much trust in that server, huh? It's crazy. It's trying to watch the chat at the same time. I apologize.
Yeah, so am I.
Yeah, no worries. So the issue I have, this is the main issue I have with FE Core, is the fact that this doesn't make sense to me. If you're trying to prove a flat Earth, you've developed this quote unquote scientific team of like-minded people, and determine it's flat. Why would you force people to buy the results rather than changing everything?
Yep. Monetizing truth is I guess the way they want to see things. Yeah, if they're actually seeking truth.
Well, the crazy part is that FE Core is literally turning into Flat Earth Society.
But see, Flat Earth Society is just a psyop by NASA and the Jews and the Freemasons.
Oh, wait, I thought that's what Globe. Fuck, I'm so confused. See, then that's the other thing. It's. I'm sorry. I demand that there are more flat earthers calling out bullshit. It's just ridiculous to me to go from listening from stream to stream, and I've heard 3 different flat earthers, 3 different views, all changed into the views of the others on one panel, so that everyone would calm down. It's like, well, you took him off what I was trying to explain. It's just a derail fest.
I just want to see some kind of model.
Well, there's a lot of models at Hobby City. I suggest like a
yeah.
I like little model boats. They're pretty cool.
Oh, hush.
But one of the big things, the big issues I have with this is that people don't realize. Say again?
You know why I like model boats?
Why that?
Because they go over the curve.
Well, that's the thing. Well, at what point do other flat earthers go, that observation doesn't work? Why are you still talking about it? Like, real shit, I did it all the time. I'll tell you right now, I got in more debates with flat earthers as a flat earther than I did ever since I've been back to the globe.
Now, see, Leighton is actually, like I said, he's pretty new to this whole flat globe thing, and I mentioned all this to him earlier this evening. I think he's the one that said, well, if it's not a globe, then shouldn't the horizon just kind of fade away into nothing rather than being a sharp line?
Yeah. Well, see, that's one of the things that we've been talking about lately. And so,
and he's new to this.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. If you look at, I don't care what flat earth you look at, if they're depicting how the sun rises and sets, you'll notice one thing every time: the sun moves in a straight line, or in their experiments. I mean.
Yep. Doesn't sweep north.
Yeah, it's always a straight line, and they always use that as a depiction of why sunsets happen. And the issue is that, one, we don't see the sun traveling in a straight line. Two, it's fully explainable by the curvature of Earth and its measurements and everything. To think that we live on a perfectly round ball. You guys are, I wouldn't even answer that anymore. That's how obvious it is. We can break down physics and all that kind of other stuff, but just on the general terms of acting surprised when chemos come out with all that bullshit. I don't know how the fuck seriously, I think every time we hear this off-the-wall bullshit answer, just leave the meet and exit out of the YouTube and go, figure that out before you come and ask me something else.
All chemo knows how to do is scream no and throw spaghetti.
Oh, and yell, it's temperature.
Yeah.
Well, I already told you, chemo he's literally the snake oil salesman king. He's the first one I ever coined that, and that's what he does.
No, I think QE might have that one.
No, QE, he's a nobody. Like, seriously, chemo's bigger than him.
Yeah,
he doesn't show
QE sells a lot of bullshit.
He sells a lot of colorful shit. He loves that paint with that pink text.
Oh God, yes. Yeah, it looks like Walt Disney threw up on his screen with all those colors. Yeah, QE's kind of like the perfect storm of ignorance and ego.
It's if I don't care what shape you think it is, to come to a conclusion about anything besides your own shit is you're begging to come up with these anomalous. Yes, situations that don't even see. That's why you guys are up here. That don't exist. Period. A Glober, and a flat earther can go to the same beach, stand 1 foot apart from each other, and observe sunrise and sunset. Why hasn't that happened? Just on the understanding of what are we observing. That's simple. But you won't. They pick these places that have, these phenomena that happen and can be explained by multiple ways. They're actually making the test more difficult to seem as if they have to mitigate that because presupposition of a globe. Yeah, well, again, a model, this is everyone in the chat, a model is not built and then we decide where we live. We needed to know the data from researching and studying where we live to place on a model, which develops a system that we can predict. Flat Earth can't do any of that. Can't do the first step. And I think if they understood what science really was, not a person, it's not even an entity, I don't think it'd be the way it is. That's just me.
If somebody's actually trying to, and I use this term in quotes, seek the truth, end quote, they're going to let they're going to let their opinion follow the evidence. They're not going to let the evidence follow their opinion. And that's a fundamental difference that I've seen in the two communities. You know, the Globe Deniers are letting the evidence follow their opinion. You know, how do these things work in the globe model, but not work in the flat model or the flat conjecture? I won't even call it a model because there isn't one. They don't work in the flat conjecture, and yet somebody still say, well, it works because of personal atmo planar perspectodome.
Well, the thing is about that one would be you have to remember. Let's see how to explain. You don't need to understand something to think you know something, or even remember where the fuck you got it from.
But the data does not fit on the flat conjecture.
100%, I agree.
You know, and that's what bumfuzzles me. I'm not saying that these people are stupid or anything. It's just there's something wrong between their opinion of what's going on and what the data is pointing to.
Well, let me say it for you. These people are stupid, yes.
I don't think all of them are stupid. No, I don't buy that. Sorry, Blue.
Well, see, what I've learned to do is I've learned that when that happens, I'm not talking about me, so I have nothing to worry about. It's hard to specify which one you're talking about because, first of all, and this is as real as it gets, every single popular flat Earth channel knows it's not flat.
Now that I would believe.
Yeah, Bro Sanchez, Nathan's, Ranty,
Yeah, I agree
Warrior, and here's the bad side to it, because there's always an opposite side. Red's Rhetoric, Fight the Flat Earth, I don't even know, Godless Engineer or whatever, but that little crew, it's the same thing. Same thing, little click. They need Flat Earth, and Flat Earth needs them. That's why you only see Riley Fight the Flat Earth. No disrespect for Cylinder's Cat, and these other Flat Earthers on that channel. It's
my youngest daughter has a little hobby farm, and she has some goats, and she gave her goats strange names. The latest one was Selena Goatmez. That was her latest goat, but she has two goats named Joker and Batman, and the reason she named the one Joker was because of the coloring, the patterning on his face, and the one she named Batman was just kind of a dark color. And I said, well, why did you name him Joker and Batman? And so she explained, this one's the way his face is all colored, kind of looks like the Joker, and every Joker needs a Batman. So every Joker needs a Batman.
You make a good point, Sean. I mean, without flat Earth idiots, I wouldn't have a YouTube channel.
Yeah, you wouldn't have a job.
But see, the thing is, you're not.
I didn't have a job before I didn't have this job.
What's up, Drez? How you doing, my friend? You gotta make sure you're on mute.
Hey, you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Yeah.
Hey, how you doing, my brother? How you doing?
Doing good.
Howdy do, Buckaroo.
Yeah, Blue. Just on what you just said, but there's a huge difference. Your content speaks for itself. They have to create, and this is both sides. They have to create that. Ranty, Nathan, they have to create those Globers to come on and that happen. Brenda, Rumpus, I mean, they know exactly how to trigger them. It's like clockwork, they know. And Rumpus and Brenda, they all go there, just knowing exactly what's going to happen because it happens every day.
Yeah, I've seen it.
Yeah, and there's Fight the Flat Earth and that group. They have a certain amount of Flat Earthers they know they can call upon to have this same debate.
Shit show.
Yeah, and to me, it literally to me seems like those are the ones that need to be, on their own little corner, not dealing with people who are trying to figure shit out. Because, put it this way, those guys are smart. I don't listen to anything Fight the Flat Earth. I don't think I've actually heard more than 10 minutes of any type of explanation on where we live, based on I don't want to hear him talk shit all night.
Yeah, but still, every Joker needs a Batman.
Oh, one day that Batman's gonna figure out where that Joker lives. I say it's gonna be a real bad one.
Now, my point being, if you're gonna have a discussion, it takes two people, minimum.
Yeah.
Well, what about for me though? Because I get triggered real easy.
Yeah, you also talk to telephone poles.
What the hell? I talk to myself all the damn time.
Wait. I do not talk to telephone poles. Where the hell did that come from? I mean, I talk to a lot of shit that is irrelevant and conscious, but definitely not a telephone pole. Like, that's 2019. There's not that many telephone poles where I live anymore. Everything's satellite and fiber optic.
No, Satelloon, not satellite.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, first of all,
Satablimps.
Those are real, just so you guys understand.
Well, we know that.
They do not replace satellites, though. They're even called
Satelloons.
Well, they're up there. They're doing them right now. Actually, I just got a report from ScopeX. I didn't even check it. Because I know ScopeX is probably in the next few months definitely going to start that field study with the SRM, which was supposed to start last year. Maybe.
By the way,
it's crazy.
I want to shamelessly plug something real quick. If you ever want to give somebody the gift that says "I love you," get them a back scratcher. Go ahead.
Oh no, I was just thinking like there actually was a time where I personally think that we used to have some really good debates, regardless of who's right, who's wrong, or whatever. There was a time where there was some pretty decent debates, man, on both sides. But now it's like y'all say, it's more of a shit show now, and I think the reason is people has become very lazy, because back in the day, if you wanted to see a shit show, we all went to the zoo. Monkeys throw shit all the time, and now we don't have to go to the zoo. We can just get on YouTube. Crazy.
Touche, mon frere.
The Nathan Zoo. Oh, wonderful. Readmission.
Yeah, man, that's crazy.
That was one of the things that when I first found Flat Earth, and Dredd, you can speak to this. It didn't matter to me what side you're on. There's a conversation for everything. I'm more like for this is like as real as it gets. I'm more interested in the conversation than I am in proving any flat earther wrong, or when I was a flat earther, any globe are wrong. It literally is a conversation I enjoy. How far will I go with it though? Chris Berry, not very far. He triggers me pretty damn easy. Seek and find. I just don't think he even knows what a truther is, let alone be just one of those.
And you know what? I do agree with you. And one of the things I always respected about you is that I remember there's been times where we'll have like a globe earther on the panel, and when they say like some of the most outlandish shit, you will always correct them. You didn't just agree because, oh yeah, he's a globe earther like me. Because it used to be times where we had people, and I did the same thing. Like, that's one of the things that really truly irks my nerve is to have somebody to claim to be like a flat earther and to come out and say some of the most silliest shit. Yeah. I mean, we talking Star Wars, Star Trek shit.
And I've been telling flat earthers it's time. If you really are a truther, flat earther, you guys shouldn't be trying to break down these glober explanations. You should be breaking down the flat earth explanation that doesn't work.
Exactly.
And
that's exactly what I do. I always try to debunk myself. I go in and if something don't seem right, I'm not afraid to say, look, nah, that actually don't work. You know what I'm saying? It wouldn't work. Or I just tell you that I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Simple as that. And like you said, we really want to find the truth. you have to show that you're about truth, not just say it. But when it comes to flat Earth versus globe or whatever the hell they believe the shape is, they tend to have this gang like mentality. So I'm gonna just ride or die with this person
Yeah,
because we agree on the shape. Like that's insane, man.
It's weird because flat Earth didn't used to do that, where it's like I don't need to understand. Everyone else says it is, so it is. There was a point where a lot of people were trying to research it. You're hot mic and unpaid.
Okay.
A lot of people that I hung around with when I first came in, I mean, they were about these what we used to call them builds, where you just think tanking. It's not about you're wrong, he's right. It's just what could it have been? How did it work? Blah 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 blah. But it turned into
those.
Say again?
I was saying brainstorm. We kind of come together and brainstorm. I like them. Them like my favorite live streams when we just brainstorm. Go ahead.
That's exactly why I say I don't like to debate. I like to discuss. Debates, it's too much back and forth. I win, you win type situation. No one's listening because it can get personal. I like to discuss things because when you discuss things, you have more time. You get to rationally come to a conclusion about what someone else is saying and validate it yourself, or realize how there's no way of validating it at all. The double speak is kind of odd. I don't really like talking about that because I think that's them trying to figure out what to say next. But the biggest issue I wanted to talk about when it comes down to this, I know, but I don't want to tell you type attitude that Flat Earth is running with, is that it's literally not flat earthers. It's these content creators that they've been listening to for years, and they don't have to understand it. They don't have to even do these experiments. Someone who claims to have done it did it.
See, what it gets down to fundamentally, and at the root foundation of everything, truth is objective, not subjective.
Oh yeah, I tell people all the time, because I get a lot of people going, "Oh, Truth Army," blah blah. No, it's my truth. No one here needs to leave this fucking platform or from my chat thinking that what I said is done. Every fact, and there's no more fiction about it. Figured it out. No, you can use my words as step stools, or a way of debunking everything I say easier, because I probably do that a lot. But the reality of it is truth is your truth. Your truth may not be my truth, but it's still your truth and it's still mine.
What does it say when you can find more truth in a Star Trek episode than you can find in Flat Earth?
That's not much. But well, even better, it'd be like this. It goes, so if your truth is correct to you, and my truth is my truth, but here's where shit gets real. It's only one fact. Facts is facts. And if it distinguishes with truth is correct or not, that's how you determine it. That would be the scientific method. Or
truth is not flexible. I mean, 2 + 2 = 4.
No,
no matter what.
But not if I don't know your math.
Not if we're dealing with trinary.
No. Put it this way. So here's one. All the things I believe in about weather modification. As far as I know, I can read a document and I can depict and what my perception would give me as what they're talking about. And this has happened before. And someone else had read the same publication and it read differently to them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not about I was wrong or he was wrong. It's literally how you interpreted what you thought you saw or how you understood it. Truth, I mean, every one of us if we were watching a MMA fight in the cage, we all may have different winners and point them for different things, but that's still all our truths. All truths they're still truth. But if someone's truths say some of the loser won, and then guess what? Your truth not as valid. It's not as validated. So
it's a valid opinion. It may not necessarily be a valid truth.
Right.
But
it'd be more of an opinion.
But if we're talking truth in general, then isn't that the same?
Truth is an objective thing. You can have the opinion that 2 + 2 = 11, and I could be of the opinion that 2 + 2 = 22. But the simple fact of the matter is that truth in a decimal system that we use by default, 2 + 2 = 4. So that means your truth and my truth are not truths, but opinions. The fact is that 2 + 2 = 4. That's the truth.
Well, yeah. Well, your truth is stacked on your belief.
No, it's not a truth. It's an opinion.
Well, no. Your opinion is your truth, still. In my opinion, truth.
I have to disagree with you here. You're conflating truth with opinion, and those are two fundamentally different things.
How?
Well, you could be of the opinion that I'm an asshole, but you're way wrong.
If every time I talk to you, you're an asshole, that's my truth.
That is your opinion.
But it's true to me.
That's an opinion.
Still true to me.
Okay, truth is objective.
So why aren't opinions?
When you're dealing with what you think of a person, there is no truth. There's only opinion.
No.
When you're dealing with what you think of a person, but when you deal with, go ahead.
That's my ex. She's a bitch. That's a fact. It's the truth. In my opinion.
Well, when you're dealing with exes, that's a whole different ball game. But when you're dealing with facts, with science, with biology and these sorts of things, mathematics, physics, there is truth and there is opinion, and they are not necessarily the same.
But let's go to that, because I'm confused by what the difference is. Because for me, if you're giving your opinion, you believe your opinion is correct. That's the definition of truth. You're what you believe to be true.
But whether you think it's true or not is immaterial. It's not okay. All right, I'm going to make a statement here. 2 + 2 = 11. Did I tell you the truth?
No.
Or did I tell you my opinion?
No, you told me your fallacy. It's not even an opinion. You can't take a fact and break it down into a opinion. It doesn't work that way.
An opinion is just something someone believes.
Well, a belief is something that someone believes to be true.
Yeah, that's true.
But that doesn't mean it is true.
It doesn't mean it's an opinion. It's kind of. It seems like one of those things that you can't run. You can't. There's no concrete answer to that either. Because there's a kid on an island that has never in his life seen electronics, and that math example means shit all to him. It wouldn't be able to have a conversation with it.
Yeah, they have a different way of calculating things.
Just fuck the language barrier alone. That's what I was trying to say, though. Because
so would 2 + 2 be factual to that individual? It wouldn't be.
Well, here's the problem.
What 2 + 2 = 4 wouldn't be facts to that kid who grew up in that island.
Here's the problem with the example altogether, and this is my opinion, obviously, or what I believe to be true. Whatever. To use math is kind of just you can't use math in a philosophical argument, I guess, because math
but when we're talking about truth, we have to use something as an example that is a demonstrable truth.
But then why wouldn't you just call it fact? That is fact, or it's been proven.
Okay, then we can call it a fact and an opinion.
Well, opinion.
Just because you have the opinion that 2 + 2 = 4 doesn't mean 2 + 2 = 11 doesn't mean that's the fact.
Yeah, again, that's why I was trying to say, because that's like saying you're hot mic and dreads. That'd be kind of like saying that dress is red. It's your truth, belief, it's your opinion, but it could be a green, or Could be like that damn.
Well,
Facebook
if
thing.
it's
It could be
if it's not red, then that's false. So it's not the truth.
But wait, that doesn't make sense because you may perceive it to be different, and therefore it being your truth. Remember, truth isn't proving, or it's not it's not even a fact.
Yes, it is.
No, truth is yours. It's not. It's
That's an opinion.
Yeah, but it's truth. It's just the way it is. It's gonna run in circles because no matter what, it's a correlation of how your brain. It's how the human brain works in those steps. A baby doesn't know truth. Or have
truth is a demonstrable and empirical fact. Opinion is something that you believe is true. But that doesn't mean that what you believe is true is actually true. I could believe that I can talk to my doorknob and it talks back to me. But does that make it true? Is that an empirical and demonstrable fact that I have conversations with my doorknob?
We'd have to do some studies, but I'm going to believe. I'm under the opinion of the fact is.
This is the kind of conversation we should be having at a German cafe in like the 1800s.
Yeah, realizing that. But that's also the other thing. The idea that it kind of got into a lot of flat earthers' mindsets that. The reality is that we're not actually conducting science right here. It's a philosophical conversation, really. I think that's why they bring it to those semantic ideas. It doesn't make. Where do you start from? Here's what I mean. A flat earther hears gravity isn't real. They pick up they go through their little history and they see Riley doing a. Relative density, aka specific gravity argument.
A density disequilibrium, or whatever the hell he calls it.
Yeah, that's his belief.
But that's not true.
We're gonna do this all night. I can tell. They don't know what's realistic or not, and so what ends up happening is that whatever he says melts into their brains. And it literally just trickles off. And once you learn a lot about it, it can be just, like, frustrating. I get it. I was frustrated. Man, I've gone through hundreds of pages of documents only to go back and go, fuck. That conspiracy's screwed. But it's reality. You have to. Truth can't... what did I say?
You were agreeing with me.
No, yeah, of course I was. Definitely not. That may be your truth. Or your belief, but it's not my opinion.
Touche.
Would you say that someone who believes something to be true
can still be wrong?
But see, that's why I don't like using the math about it, because the math is a proof of something, whereas in our conscious or what we believe is not.
Wait, rewind. Could you say that again? I was a bit distracted with some meat space issues here.
I'll try.
Someone sent me a message on another medium, and I was reading it. Sorry about that.
But no worries. The problem is that I got really short-term memory loss. So guess what?
You lost it?
I didn't lose it. It honestly and truthfully believed it wasn't gonna be said and left. Yes.
Welcome to becoming an old man.
Yeah, that or all this fucking weed. One of the two, but either way, they're playing against each other. That's for sure. Okay, I got it. If math is proof stuff, and this is the idea that science doesn't prove anything, but math does. So to use that, we can systematically show examples and whatever that 2 + 2 will always equal 4. Therefore, your idea of 2 + 2 = 11 is no longer that person's truth.
Truth is truth. That's all I'm saying. Now, that's completely apart from opinions. You could be of the opinion that it equals 11, and you're calling it your own personal truth, and it's just semantics. I mean, an opinion is an opinion. Facts are facts, and they're the twain, and rarely the twain shall meet.
Could you say it like this? Truth is what your knowledge on a topic that you are willing to express.
No,
it's everyone's. What do you mean? Because it's
no.
I'm trying to figure out the difference, but where this breakdown in the difference is on it.
Well, there you go.
Truth is demonstrable. Truth is empirical. Truth is a fact, a demonstrable, repeatable fact. Opinion is just what somebody thinks.
That's not true, though. We already established that wasn't true.
That's your opinion.
It's on my instant replay.
All right, kids, don't make me break out Wikipedia.
The ultimate arbiter of everything, Wikipedia.
I kind of do feel bad because I joined a server last night and like all they do is philosophy. It kind of inspired me. But no, like it can't be empirical. That's impossible. Because again, I think, my truth is that cigarettes aren't that bad. I know I'm wrong, but I'm right.
Wait, what?
It didn't really make sense in my head either. It sounded good before I said it.
Yeah, rewind that one.
No.
Yeah, it sounded good in your head. Just kind of lost its charm when it left your mouth.
Replay deleted.
Something happened there.
It happens all the time. All the time. Call them brain farts.
I'm gonna go ahead and step back for a minute. Let some other people talk. I've consumed far too much of this panel time so far.
Glitch in the matrix.
It's all good unpaid. I believe it is your time to relax. I think it's the truth as well. No,
that's your opinion.
But I need you to not do that because your whole little truth rant you'd had is so wrong. It pissed me off. And then I realized, like, wait, why is he saying that?
Because I believe that's the truth.
Oh my God!
No,
we got some names going.
Y'all gonna kill me over here, man.
I just want to let some other people speak. Is all. I just I'm not triggered or anything. I'm having a good time, fueled by Dr. McGillicuddy.
I'd like to say that my idea that you can't use math debunked his whole philosophy in it, so I won. Thank you.
Oh, sure, Shills. Get him all pissed off and then leave us to deal with him.
No, I'm still here. I'm just drinking more.
Yeah. So, what do you guys think about truth?
See, I'm the anti-Aaron. I don't get more belligerent when I drink. I get funnier when I drink.
To who?
That's what's up.
And that's definitely your opinion.
That's his opinion.
Oh yeah.
That's his opinion. But it's his truth, though.
Mm-hmm. Only if he believes it to be true.
Oh my goodness! I'm gonna use this shit on some Globe Earthers too in the future. But like, yo, that's your truth. That's your opinion, though. Yeah, I'm gonna just confuse the fuck out of them. Fuck it.
Yeah, like Unpaid did, because I know for a fact that argument works. It's a very good.
Just
argument.
confuse them.
Yeah, you can have it confusing. It's up to you. It's your belief, your truth. Do what you want with it. I'm just giving you my opinion. It ain't my truth.
You'll fuck them up so bad to the point where they'll think they're insane. They're like, they won't know what reality is by the time I'm done with them.
You got to remember,
I swear.
In a real philosophy debate, the winner is the one that, when the other person doesn't have anything to say.
True. That's true.
Or at least I believe that that's the way it works.
Oh yeah.
Oh, damn it.
I mean, don't take my information for truth, you know.
You gotta change the title of the live stream. You gotta change.
No, man.
Truth or opinion.
People will read it. Start their eyes will cross. They'll start crossing freeways and shit. Nah, I'm not gonna be that guy.
Oh my god.
Speaking in tongues, handling snakes.
This fucking thing's turning into the Gong Show.
Oh my god.
Poor Chris Berry and Mind of God.
Where is
Oh,
Chris?
boy.
You say Chris? Chris, he's here the other day. He's around every once in a while. I know he's listening in. He listens all the time. That's how I know if I have an audio issue. He comes flying into the chat. Audio issue, and then he leaves.
Oh
Thing is, I
boy.
was drinking, and no, it was not alcohol. Alcohol is bad for you, I believe. It's the truth. It is bad for you. Kill people, DUIs, all that stuff. Not just my opinion. All right. You know what I haven't done in a minute? Looked at the chat.
Oh,
I never do. Ever. I suck. Like, you're always, like, you're talking to the chat, and you can do a stream talking to that. You should see the people in my chat. I can't talk to them.
they be cussing your ass out. Look at the chat, damn it.
Oh, yeah. Well, so what I've done is I've looked like a bunch of software. I'm anything I could possibly find. There's no like alert. Like if I can get an alert that someone's pinging me in that chat, I'd look. But sometimes, like I thought when I had multiple screens, I'd always see everything, like an eagle. And I realized, no, you just clutter everything up in those screens.
And you know what? It's human nature. We had like a alert, like you said. It's just human nature. We'll abuse the shit out of it. We'll just be typing all kind of shit just to get your attention. Spam in the chat. Motherfuckers start spamming the chat. You know, can you imagine having this loud ringing noise in your ear that when every time somebody type in your chat or something like that, or hashtag your name or something, you get this real loud ringing, and you have that shit all in your ear all night.
well, P Mars tries to do that to us, but we've figured that out pretty much.
I haven't talked to P Mars in a while. How you doing?
Yeah, he's a billion times worse than he was.
Oh wow!
Accusations everywhere, racial slurs, you name it.
Ah, shit.
He's trying to become public enemy #1, but he's pathetic still.
Oh,
If you just, all you got to do is ignore him. He'll sit in the chat for 10 minutes, get pissed off, and leave.
Well, Dredd was around when P Mars, Lewis, and Tim used to roll around together.
Yeah.
Lewis.
They used to be tight buddies.
Yeah, like Tim was like bringing Lewis up and changing his diaper. It's crazy. I remember those days.
Yeah.
That was when like
feed him. That's when it was really like very active. I say that.
Like
things were a lot more active. Yeah.
Like I said, Tim's an asshole and he can be racist at times, but he had like that. Believe it or not, that's where I found out these trolls have ethics. He explained it to me. He was like, "There's only so far someone's gonna go before everyone else goes. What the fuck are you doing?" and when it was like that, it was actually a lot worse, but it made sense. Now, I mean, everyone could be a fucking troll. Some people, unpaid show, can do friendly.
Cough.
You know what I mean? It's like it's more accepted, but it's like a race to see who can poke the one last time before someone snaps.
It's almost like they want to see somebody like truly snap for real, like in real life, like they really want to see them go overboard or some shit. But that's what trolls do.
I fucking did it. I made him go off.
Made who go off?
And that's their entertainment. That's their entertainment on YouTube.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And I mean, honestly, I believe that I can't speak for all trolls. I mean, again, this is me. This is my belief. I think some of these trolls are probably like cool people. They just do it just for shits and giggles. It's just the internet, you know.
I can tell you right now, 30 to 40% of the trolls that we were dealing with when I first came Flat Earth and was on all your panels, I know them all. Yeah, most of them are pretty cool.
Yeah. They just be bullshitting around. And I think that some people are they get so caught up emotionally. It thrives them to continue fucking with you. If you give them that attention, why stop now? Let's see how far we could go. Let's see if we can actually get them to jump off the cliff and not walk to the edge of the cliff.
Well, that's the crazy part to me that I don't get, because one of the biggest arguments for Globers is, it's fucking wrong with you. Like, what are you doing? Like, how did you come to that? But like, you're yelling at Flat Earthers for having the argument. They wouldn't have an argument if we didn't have that conversation.
Exactly.
But
it goes both ways, though. It goes both ways.
Yeah, it does.
You got so flat. Like I said, I was never afraid to ask Flat Earthers, tough questions too. Because like I said, at the end of the day, I just want to know. And even when I first started making videos, most people know that I came in the middle anyway. That's how I started off. I came in saying, look here, I don't know, man. I don't watch these videos. I don't watch some videos. I did some research. Now I'm scratching my damn head. I was pretty much borderline, and I wasn't really on either side. Then eventually I did lean more towards the flat earth. But I still had questions, you know what I'm saying? That's why anytime a globe earther, a respectable globe earther that come on a panel, a lot of the flat earthers used to be like, yo, Dre, body bag them and da-da-da. I'm like, well, no, I'm trying to listen to what he have to damn say. Fuck all that. So I could go back and do the research. Because at the end of the day, it's about what the knowledge I'm taking in, or the information I'm taking in. I have to live with this myself. I'm not here just to fucking entertain you. I'm not a fucking monkey in the cage. I think we were talking about flying shit earlier. You know what I'm saying? I'm not here to have a shit show, constantly shit shows, and be y'all zoo. You know what I'm saying? Nah, I want to learn. I want to see what's going on. You know what I'm saying? So I'll be able to come back and have stronger arguments. Basically, like what you did. You always went back, got your notes, did your research, came back. You know what I'm saying? Never disrespected nobody. Just came back with your stuff. And a lot of people used to be so emotionally attached to their belief system that, they used to try to, pick fights and shit. And I always try to, not try, but I always made it clear that Sean G is cool. I said, nah, y'all ain't gonna disrespect this man like that. Nah, fuck that. Or get the fuck off. You know what I'm saying? Because I want to hear what the man got to say. Because I see he got his notes. He did his research. Some of you motherfuckers are up here just regurgitating some YouTube video you saying. You know what I'm saying? So I don't want to hear that shit. Because I don't seen the same video you saw.
But to many of them, doing research is just watching more flat earth videos. It's not actually doing any experimentation, observations, or real science.
Well, we did have the famous Globebusters, and I think didn't they say it moved or it showed rotation or some shit? I don't know. Did they rent like or bought like a $20,000?
Oh, the ring laser gyroscope.
Oh my God, that was like comedy hour.
Bob Nodell.
Bob.
To quote Jaron, that was very interesting. See what I did there?
Yeah.
One of the things that I would say, I mean, there's probably a few things that I can list off that was the tipping point for me. Behind the imaginary curve, Jeranism's little experiment with the flashlight. That's what I have an issue with. Why wasn't anyone calling them out?
And Sean, I think I was probably the only quote unquote flat earther that called both of those incidents out. And I called it out, and I mean logically, I wasn't like calling them names, just raging. No, I I was the only one, and it felt really bad because it's like I'm like, yo, all these people pretended to be cool with me. You know what I'm saying? I'm like, I would think so. In my mind, I'm thinking, well, they will listen to me because I'm thinking they are cool with me. I'm like, yo, this is not good. You know what I'm saying? This is not good at all. You know what I'm saying? And they just like, nah, you hating it. It was this, it was that. I'm like, that don't make sense. What are you talking about? It was this and it was that.
Yeah, well,
I'm like, dude, go ahead.
That was one of the biggest things actually, that's what I'm going through right now. I'd say a vast majority of the people that I met through your panel, I've cut them off. They're not genuine. Dre Midas,
They're not.
He's not genuine. He doesn't. He wants to conflate any argument you have, and it got to the point where even defending him, he wanted to fucking go off. And I was like, I ain't got time for that shit no more. Seek and find. He will ask the same 3 questions every time, and I'm not talking every once in a while but he was here every day for a few months, asking what are the effects of gravity that we can see. If you don't take away from asking 35 times, you're gonna get pushed away, and I'm not gonna have time for you. I don't have time for bullshit, real shit. That's like, are we trying to seek and find? Are you trying to figure shit out, or are you playing a game? You go play somewhere else.
What are the effects of gravity? I'd say lean forward, then keep doing so until your nose hurts. There you go.
What he wanted to do, he wanted to equate it with water. And I explained to him that, my son talks in his sleep, so haha. What he
all kids talk in their sleep.
No, my son is a fucking sailor. Like, how do you like?
Oh, really?
Oh man. So my son doesn't cuss at all. Like, I've had his friends be like, "Why doesn't John cuss?" Blah blah. But when he's asleep, he cusses worse than any of us do at any given time. I've never heard anybody cuss like my son cusses.
You need to record it. You should record it and be like, "Yeah, I caught you cussing."
I have so many recordings of it because I've sat,
a drunken sailor with Tourette syndrome.
Yes, like literally the first 10 times this happened, I literally sat in my chair and went, "Do I wake him up and beat him? Like, what do I do?"
No.
It was so bad. It was like I'm telling you, like, man, I won't even repeat what he said. Like, it's not even that it was that bad. It's just like, you don't say that shit. He says it with depth. He knows what it means.
Shit. Oh man, you can fuck around and make a documentary about just that kind of stuff, man.
Oh yeah, that's well, he's gonna be 14, 15 soon, and that first girlfriend's gonna come walking on in.
Oh wow, damn, he getting up there.
Yeah, he's just turned 12. Yeah.
My twins are 12.
Huh? What's that, Dress? What did you say?
My twins are 12.
God, you got twins.
I've got 2.
You can tell.
And then I've got another one who's older.
Oh, you poor bastard!
Twin. So I have 3.
That means it means you didn't perfect the pull-out method. Haha.
No. It was all men. I just have potent mayonnaise.
You got some good baby gravy.
He said, all right. He said organic mayonnaise. Organic.
Powerful organic mayonnaise.
Me and my wife, we only had sex 3 times.
Yeah,
actually,
come on, man.
Wait a minute.
Not true, but when we decided to have children, it took less than a week.
Wait a minute, Sean. What did you just say, Sean?
Yeah, I said 3 times for the 2 times for the twins as well, and that can happen, you know.
Mm.
So what you're saying is I've had your wife more than you have.
I've never been married, so that's your belief, which is not true.
But, okay.
And your opinion is garbage.
It's true.
I was going to say that's about as true as some of the things Gleam says. He said, picking on a guy outside who's too cowardly.
Hey, Glim, you need to get the fuck on this panel and stop doing all that shit in my chat and my comments.
I hate when they do that. They'll sit in the chat and talk all this shit.
People get pissed off at him, and the reason people get pissed off at him is quite simply the fact that he takes their words, he twists them to actually present his own argument back, which is why I call him a liar all the time.
He's unpaid. He's one of those flat Earth apologists.
One of those.
Yeah, I know. I know.
But I like Glem because he's smart.
But that's just my opinion.
Not going to work anymore.
He's not stupid. I will give him that. I did call him an idiot, and I should stop pathetic on the stupid kid. But
he's actually smart as
but
shit.
he's not stupid.
He's too smart for the discussion. That's the problem.
He thinks he's he thinks he is smarter than he is, and he doesn't listen enough.
He's always right.
And he thinks he's always right. Yeah. And what he does is he tries to basically flackwall with technical terms. Which is pointless. So, as Einstein said, if you understand something, you can explain it simply.
Yeah.
I didn't know Einstein died a bad death. He had a heart attack or some shit, and previous shit, guess what they say? He had pneumonia or some shit, and he came back in the room and he was dead, just like that. And they did a study on his brain, and his brain works different.
Yeah, they actually found Einstein dead on the toilet watching midget porn.
Oh shit!
So he's like,
I've got a guy called Schrodinger put him in a box.
So I say you're what 7 shots deep, unpaid.
Wait a minute, what was that? I was too busy coughing.
7 shots deep.
There you go.
I thought you said 7 midgets deep for a second, but
no, unpaid did. But that would be your belief. I don't know if it's true. It's yours.
Oh shit! Who's on first base?
Exactly. Yeah, that's how we're going to stop that one.
Oh, look at him! Bless. He's still trying to gaslight out there.
Oh, Blue. In that routine, I want to test your knowledge of this routine. What is the only position on the field that was not mentioned in the routine?
Doggy. What?
I used to know. I can't remember now.
Right field.
I guess we're talking baseball then.
Abbott and Costello.
It's a comedy routine that has to do with baseball, so tangentially you're correct.
Dress, you never heard it?
I'm not sure what you're talking about. It's just I know what right field is.
Please,
you got it. You got to pull up
the baseball game.
Please, somebody get the transcript and read that shit to him here. It would be wonderful.
Just look it up and present it. It's even funnier when they do it.
I can't believe you don't know what the hell this is.
All right, I'm going to look for it. I'll post the link.
Actually, did you hear about the last Ashes result?
Who?
Exactly. Shut the fuck up.
I didn't even hear you.
So did you hear about the last Ashes result?
Who?
Yeah, exactly. Shut the fuck up. I'm repeating myself.
Who wins?
Gleam every time.
I got it. This is the greatest shit on earth. I can't believe you've never seen this.
Oh, I know this. You didn't tell me it was Abbott and fucking Costello.
Actually, unpaid did. Or somebody did. I heard the name. You don't listen to us. It hurts our feelings. Not a belief.
I've only been up for 20 minutes. Give me a break.
Why would you come
I've just made my first cup of coffee.
Is that what you do? You wake up all angry and cranky. You're like, yeah, let's go talk to flat earthers.
Pretty much. And then now I feel all calm and at one with the world, and I'm looking at beautiful blue skies and fields and trees.
You get triggered. It's good. You sound like you hyperventilate.
Sorry?
I said I've heard you get triggered. You hyperventilate a lot.
Yeah, I'm not the world's calmest human being. And you wonder why they don't want us to have handguns in the UK.
Yeah, bro.
Yeah.
Blood orange.
But don't worry, I can always attack you with a relatively unripe banana.
I really didn't even pay attention. You talked, I stopped listening. Say it again?
So now you know why they don't let us have guns in the UK.
Fast forward, I heard that part. fucking with your dress.
But don't worry, I could still attack you with an unripe banana.
I don't even know what that means. Scares me.
Would you really be frightened of someone trying to knife you with a piece of fruit?
Yes. Because something's wrong upstairs. No telling what they'll do.
Yeah, but what if they came at you with what if they came at you with a pointed stick?
I'd be hungry.
How does that follow?
I don't know. He's drunk. What's up, Ann?
Okay, I posted the Who's on First routine in side chat here. If somebody wants to present, feel free.
Did you
or
miss
not.
that whole thing? I had it on the screen for like 5-10 minutes.
You had the transcript on the screen.
Yep.
Yeah.
Did you? Okay. I'm confused. Your drunk has worn off on me now. Now I feel drunk. What I'm talking about now. I'm all confused. All I want to say is truth, belief, and fucking opinion. Brain hurt.
I've got to ask, what time is it over your side of the woods? Isn't it about 3 o'clock in the morning for you?
About almost 2:30.
It's 4:20 here, or 4:21 now here.
Oh, fucking Central boys.
Nah.
Fucking foreigners.
They live the other side of the mountains. Don't trust them, Sean.
Ooh.
All the people who have the time zone of 4:30.
We got a conspiracy.
Yeah, that's Central Time Zone. You were correct.
Yeah, Central. Yeah, it's Central Time Zone. It's the other side of the mountains. They're the weirdos. You live on the West Coast, which is the other side of the mountains from them. That's what.
In a place named after a fairy tale.
Me?
Where do you? Well, can you say where you live and not give yourself up? It's like Nottingham or fucking some type of weird fucking.
No, he doesn't have to worry about giving himself up. He came out of the closet years ago.
Oh, no. Never mind. I know.
No, I live out in
Yeah. I remember the conversation.
Yeah.
Now I remember where that came from. Okay, yeah, never mind. Yeah, that's wow. I turned full circle. That was weird. Yeah, my bad.
I think we're going. Yeah, but no, but
but we know what we're talking about.
But we now know. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's not an opinion; it's truth to us.
Hey, the truth is the truth, regardless of our opinion.
No, your truth is your truth. Doesn't mean it's my truth.
No, the truth is separate to both of us. That's the third side of the trilemma, isn't it?
No. You can
There's
have
my truth, your truth, and the truth.
No, well, yeah, but
yeah,
you and unpaid literally use the same argument, just different words.
I know.
Doesn't make me any wrong. That's right. I said wrong.
But it
That's
means
your opinion.
It means I can articulate an argument effectively.
Well, I can lay down a fact for you and turn this fucking stream off, dickheads.
Hey, Sean. If I agreed with you, then I guess we'd both be wrong.
And doesn't rage quitting mean you lose, Sean?
Huh? How do you? I can't rage quit out of my hang. I just end the hang.
Well, I would class that as rage quitting.
Well, guess what?
Because you were afraid of the argument.
If I bump the chair and it knocks the Monopoly board off the table, that's not my fault.
Hey, you're the pigeon on the chessboard, mate. Don't bring me into this.
Wait. Why I gotta be a pigeon?
Because you land, you scatter all the pieces, shut on the board, and claim victory.
Mm-hmm.
Because you generally don't find chess-playing peacocks in the city.
That is also true.
Actually, there are peacocks all over the cities.
It's good eating on a peacock.
Really?
You hear all about the peacocks, but you never hear about the peacocks.
I knew this was going to turn.
They're actually peahens, which just sounds incontinent to me.
Yeah, you dug around it.
I see this is going nowhere, so I'm going to bed.
Yeah, you know what? I'm kind of tired myself. And
I pay my sore, I closed it.
Yeah. You, Crash, and I think Farmers. You guys are like experts at this, ruining it for everyone.
Yeah. God, I love being British.
I wouldn't. I've seen the Mighty Boosh. There's nothing to be proud of.
Yeah.
I'll see you
You know
later.
what's amazing is we got other
one,
companies. We got other countries to give us money for that shit.
Have a good one, Blue.
So night, Blue. Cool. I should go and have a cigarette and actually wake up and stop poking Gleam, even though it's fun.
It's kind of funny. I'm not gonna lie. I've been watching it.
Well, the worst thing is I actually know who he is. I know where he works. I know the company he works for. But I'm not an arsehole, so I'd never dox anybody. But I wanted to actually check out what his, if he does what he claims he does. It's quite interesting. I'm not going to say anything because I know. But Gleam, I know exactly what you do.
Is he a prostitute?
Yeah. No, he's not. He works in the industry that says he does. I know what his company does. I know how they work.
I've never seen him, so I don't know.
Yeah, but you don't fuck with a security specialist. Because that's what I do for a living, Gleam. I work in IT security. It's what I specialize in. I've been doing it for quite a long time.
Hey, don't break into my shit, man. I mean,
I've never broken into anybody's computer
without their permission.
Without their permission, any individual's computer without permission.
Yeah, I've worked IT security, and I was also a locksmith, so I take it to a whole new level.
Oh, sweet.
You guys just need extra keys. You don't need all this help.
But no, I mean the thing is, and especially when you put out as much shit about yourself as Gleam does, it's not hard to track them down. It took me about 20 minutes.
Bye, guys. Just bitch slap the shit out of my microphone.
And I know who owns the company you work for, Gleam, which might explain how you got the job.
It's you're not doxing him, but you're like publicly threatening doxing. They're not even.
No. Actually, seriously, I would never dox anybody, and I mean that, Gleam. I'm just poking, so don't. Oh, I got a reaction. And I would never dox anybody because I think it's one of the scummiest things people do. It's like Darth Dawkins. I know who Darth Dawkins is. I know where he lives because someone's told me. I would never repeat that. Same with G-Man. I know G-Man's name. I know where he used to live.
See, that's because people are assholes. For instance, my friend Dredd's here. I know where he lives, but I'm an asshole. So when he's in his truck at night, I try to scare him. That's my fun. That's my truth.
Just an opinion.
Did you go all John Wayne Gacy and clown it up for the masses?
No, I just literally just told him there was someone behind him one time. See? It's good to be American dress.
It is.
Alright, guys. I'm going to get out of here.
Anyway, let's get out of here.
Anybody got anything you want to promote besides Dreads if you want to say anything about that? I'm going to talk about it anyway, so I'll get the link back out there. What else? I want to make sure. What link was that to Unpaid Chills that you put in our side chat?
Oh, that was Who's On First.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the actual Albert and Costello sketch on YouTube.
Yeah, it's freaking hilarious. I love it.
There's another one I like that was like that, but I don't remember.
Also by Abbott and Costello?
Huh?
Also by Abbott and Costello, because they do one where 7 times 13 is 28.
I'm going to let you know right now. Who's On First is about the only skit I can bear. It's not funny. It's not funny enough.
It's hilarious.
It's your opinion.
It's the truth.
That's true. It's the truth. It's your opinion.
I'm done talking about that shit. I ain't even gonna repeat it. I got one eye closed because I'm tired. I'm gonna get the fuck out of here. I'll be live, right? Like 10 around noon my time, so 10 hours from now, 10 and a half hours, somewhere around that time. I'll be live during the day, better yet. But like I said, for probably the next 3 to 4 weeks, it'll be like this because I did a bid on a big project, and the less people I hire, more money I make. Unfortunately, I got to go actually do their work to make it. So I'm gonna be pretty busy for the next couple weeks, but I'll find a time and a place to stream pretty much every day. Just want to give people the heads up on that, because that's a couple of people emailed me like, no one's going live this morning. I'm like, someone better eat that shit up. No one, you guys don't understand. You can get that right after Jose, right before Nathan and his 50 premieres. Put a link in there somewhere. You'll see it'll pop up everywhere.
So I'm going to promote something. Watch Sean G or suffer the consequences. That's my promotion.
Oh yeah. What are the consequences?
Hello, I'm Vito. How you doing?
Yeah, I'm gonna send unpaid show to have a pain and truth conversation.
Have a little chat with your kneecaps.
All I can say is, if I've come to your door, there's got to be a reason that brought me there, and it's generally not my fault.
It's been the most awkward fucking stream in a long time.
I sometimes I can do that.
I'm not even blaming you. I'm blaming the alcohol.
I was listening to this before I joined in because I've been up a little bit more than 20 minutes.
So you liked this too?
No, not hugely. I think by about sort of 15 minutes, because I thought, oh yeah, I did brush my teeth and have a dump before I came on. But I thought that was a little bit too much detail, and you probably didn't want to know about that.
Then why are you giving it to us?
Just for the information. That's why.
Oh, wait, I will be saving the clip.
You know, it was a straight one, not a coily. Just FYI. But you know. No. I just do like a good argument in the morning. It sets the tone for the day really well. So after this, I'm going to go downstairs and I'm going to go and wash my motorbike.
Supposedly.
Allegedly. Do I have a motorbike?
Don't jump. Back off that ledge.
Not much point because I'm on the ground floor. Or am I?
Hey, that's a good place to learn to fly. Stick to that.
I like the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy version of flying, which is they fall off things and miss the ground.
No, you throw yourself at the ground and then forget to hit it. Yeah. Or get distracted.
That's why flying is as easy as falling off a log, which was my favorite analogy he made. I just thought it was classic.
All right, guys. I think it's like the fourth time I've done this. Unpaid, you're good. Not really.
That's your opinion.
But nothing to promote?
No.
All right. Cool.
TRUUTUBE, nigga.
Yeah, I was going to do that after. But I mean, you can
promote it.
Go ahead. I'm going to do that regardless.
I was hoping that somebody, and somebody had some questions to ask me about the website and stuff. But I mean, most people already know. I see you.
These are all Globers. They're not going to research anything, man.
Oh yeah, I forgot. Globers just don't have to. Y'all motherfuckers, y'all are walking encyclopedias and shit. But yeah, man. But for future reference, you know what I'm saying? If y'all have any questions, y'all, just contact me. I'll let you know. Because I know a lot of people do have some concerns as far as certain like content they could put up and stuff like that. But I made sure that I did everything legally. You know what I'm saying? So when you do upload your content to TRUUTUBE, you actually it's covered by the kind of copyright protection that we do have on the website also protects the content creators that sign up to the website. So if somebody try to use your content off our website, and even if they try to put it somewhere else, you still can, take legal actions against them, get it flagged down, sue them, and all that good shit. So your content is still protected. Let me see what else. Of course, you're gonna make more money than YouTube. That's if you're into monetization and stuff like that. So we also have a monetary system on our website, which we do a lot better than YouTube. And I think YouTube right now is 55-45. We do 80-20. I mean, y'all get 80%, we get 20%. Of course, 20% is the lowest we can take it right now. Anything lower than that, it'd be hard to keep the website running. But I think that, okay, we beat them out on that. We got all the features that YouTube got, but we also have features that YouTube do not have.
Yeah, like the blogging and the pictures.
You can upload. You can post articles. You can add friends. You can like you say, you can blog. You can even post like GIFs, memes, all that kind of jazz.
So a multimedia platform then.
Pretty much, yeah. It's a multimedia platform.
Cool.
And again, like I say, when it comes, and you don't forget that people can also support you directly because it has a built-in support system. It's basically like having like once you create your channel, each content creator, you basically have a built-in Patreon to your channel. Because how some people create a Patreon and the Patreon's like $2 a month, $5 a month. It's built into your channel, so they can. You will see two different ways to support the content creator. You can follow them, or you can subscribe to them. When you subscribe to them, that's basically showing them support and stuff like that. So, but yeah, it's a lot more features that I'll be here all night. But
interesting.
But it is pretty good. I mean, I think right now it's very fluent. You know what I'm saying? Nobody has complained about any bugs or glitches or anything of that magnitude or anything like that. So right now, everything is running pretty smoothly, man, and it's growing too. It's actually growing pretty fast. So I'm kind of proud of that.
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
And as you should. Like I said, I got all that stuff figured out getting in there, and I did a couple of private streams so I can get used to it. And that's the thing I got to talk to you about. The dual stream. That it's I'm pissed I didn't even realize how to do it. That's how easy it is. It's easy in the sense of if you know how to use OBS. But yeah, because Restream, I didn't even realize Restreaming, they want you to pay up the ass to Restream from somewhere.
I used to have Restream, but they went up on the price. It used to be cheaper than what it is now, actually. I used to pay for that. And then they just went up. I was like, oh, hell no. Oh, okay, whatever. I'll do something else because y'all asking for too much fucking money. But yeah, I didn't know. I'm glad you knew. You figured out how to dual stream because I can use that because I dual stream every time I go live.
Oh yeah.
On TrueTube and YouTube.
Yeah, the configuration to go live on TrueTube is a little different, but it's pretty much the same thing. It's the same concept. Matter of fact, yeah, it's almost the same concept. The only difference is that it's your style, and also it's not being just judged and taken down by bullshit. That's the real part about all this.
Yeah, like I said, but see, a lot, I just want to make sure that people don't get concerned about, because it's more freedom, there is still boundaries we're not going to tolerate. Like, we're not going to be letting people upload videos with somebody with their head blown, smithereens, shit. Like, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
of course,
I think when I said, the non-censor thing, I definitely went too far, but it's a breath of fresh air, and that's what it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, as far as freedom of speech and all that, you can do that. But when it comes like I said, when it comes to like content, we're not gonna have like people getting shot to death, and no, we're not gonna have that type of
or a Frenchman reciting noir poetry to a cabbage.
Hey, they can upload that all they want. You know, if you want to sing to a tomato,
no, Dreads, no, they
want to
can't.
sing to it.
No.
Well, if Sean G want to talk to that light pole like he always does, he can very well do it.
Where the hell does the light post come from? I'm staring at it all the time. Must be a lot.
But go ahead, bro. Yeah, go ahead. I'm just pulling the chat.
Yeah, no worries. Damn. Brain fart. Yeah, I'm tired. I gotta get off here. What I'm gonna do is I made it like a tutorial, but I didn't. This is a fucking idiot. I am. I went. All right, good. Well, I made this for Dreads, but it doesn't really work if I upload it to YouTube. Talking to Dreads, how to do this step by step. It was weird. And I listened to it, and I'm like, I can't say people's names. It doesn't work when you do that. So I'll have it. I'll be able to at least, very least, send it to you privately. You know, through my YouTube, so that way everyone doesn't see it. But otherwise, I gotta cut all the me talking to you.
John G, don't forget, you can add me on TrueTube as a friend too. We might already be friends.
I think we already are.
Okay. So you can send me private messages. We can also have like a we could kind of like chat public, in the public as well. Mm-hmm. So you can private chat, or you can have a public chat.
I like that it has with even if you play like any so far. So what I've seen, if you play like an old broadcast, the chat always comes up with it. Like back in the day, you could be typing when your stream's offline or hours later, like that. Yeah. So if you go back to I live streamed like 2 days ago, and say if a couple of y'all go and y'all be watching it, the chat will still be live for y'all. Y'all can actually type in real time to an old live stream I did. Yeah.
So that is.
Yeah. What I've mainly been doing is I've just been almost putting myself in situations that I don't understand. And then kind of just jotting down little notes about, paths and why it did things like that. But that seems more normal to me. I know the first couple months you had a few issues, but it was more found a few issues with it. And it had other things taken care of. Yeah. And then
but you remember a few months back, the whole layout was different.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It got
we revamped the whole platform.
It evolved.
Yeah, we revamped it. We updated it like crazy. So this is right now I'm working on we building an app for it. We had to get it built from the ground up. So we're working on the app. But I'll let y'all know.
I just downloaded the app.
No, that app is to the old version. We have to build a new one. That's to the old version. Don't worry about that. That ain't gonna
fuck me.
Well, isn't that?
Yeah, I don't know. I took it off, but they still got it up. Like you still can go to get it. I'm like, yo,
you can't. iPhone doesn't do it though.
And iPhone doesn't do it. Yeah, iPhone wasn't compatible.
I was pretty
but the app that we got, the app we got that we're building right now will be for iPhones and Androids for both.
Okay.
So we'll be all right. But I'll let y'all know. I'll let y'all know when it's finished. And I'll let y'all know when to download it. As of right now, just go to the website, just use your browser, and you'll be good to go.
Check it out, please. Okay, I got literally I'm sitting here staring at the screen with one eye open. So tired. Could get the fuck out of here. Much respect, Shreds. It's home. You're always welcome here. You know that.
Appreciate that.
Yep. Hang on, I'm trying to get this damn thing off my screen. All right, there you go.
How do I leave?
Andre, I'll clue you in on that one. A guy got stuck in here. Looked like all Blair Witch out and shit. It's funny. Huey, thanks for coming in, man. I know you didn't get really much to say, but so it was good to have you here.
Yeah, actually, Sean, I've had the mic on mute the whole time because the television was on.
Okay.
Did that.
Well, so I appreciate that. But if everyone just hang out, yeah. If you want to ever just be in here, just hanging out, more than welcome to, my friend. Unpaid chills. I think you said more than enough. Leighton, I mean, welcome to the front line is what I call it.
Welcome to the trenches.
you're more than welcome to come and hang out and just hear different ideas. If you need to bounce some things off someone who may think like a flat earther but doesn't anymore, let me know. But
Yeah,
more
definitely.
importantly, you can if you ever want to, you're more than welcome on my panel anytime.
All right, thanks. I'll try and get more involved in future videos.
It takes when you're doing jump rope and you gotta do that thing right before you jump in. You're trying to get the rhythm. It's exactly like flat Earth.
That's fucked up, Sean.
That's just your opinion, though.
Oh no, that's fact. That's evidence. That's empirical. No, I don't care what you say.
Yeah, you better the fact.
Yeah. All right, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Again, thanks. Yeah, I'll hook up with you, Dreads, because I gotta show you. I gotta show you these meetups that we're in right now, and then that.
Yeah,
how to. Big.
Okay. All right.
All right, man. Okay, perfect. All right, so guys, again, thank you guys for being here. It was fun. I actually had fun. This one was definitely not a get angry type stream. Had a nice conversation with Unpaid Shields, and excuse me. But in the end, I did win in that debate. So just remember that. And when you do see Unpaid, let him know that I did win. What's up, Sasha? See you out there. What's up, Juan? Let me see who's here. What's up, Wake in SoCal? Yeah, I think I saw you earlier. And two. Yeah, guys, I appreciate the shit out of it. These hangouts, these conversations, they don't always need to be, broken down to the finest point to figure something out. If you believe it's something different, try to get a better understanding of it so you can explain it better. Sometimes it's just explanation. But more important than that, if you're a flat earther, scrutinize flat earth. Same for you guys that are on the globe. It's the reality of it. With that said, guys, I'm gonna get out of here. Like I said, I'm pretty damn exhausted. I probably won't even remember streaming. But I will be on tomorrow around noonish. It's about 8 hours from now, 8-9 hours. But I'll see you guys later. Thanks again, and I'm out. Peace.